Patch 12.18 is upon us with some nerfs, some buffs, and some other changes too, with a lot of these changes being some fine-tuning for buffs and nerfs over the previous few patches. Starting with nerfs, we have Hecarim. He's losing a good chunk of his starting health, going from 650 down to 625, along with having the AD scaling on his Q and W being turned down. This shouldn't affect his early game damage too much, but if you do build full damage Hecarim, this reduction will be felt. Next we have Callista. Her base health is also being reduced, going from 604 to 574. This will hurt her early game significantly, forcing her to put more thought into when she can be aggressive. Following this, we have Kayn. This change is only for Red Kayn, where they're lowering the AD scaling on the Q by a good amount. This should make Red Kayns, after having bought a few items, deal a good amount less damage, and likely forces Red Kayns towards a tankier build. Next we have Lulu. Lulu is an all-around beast as a support right now, so they're nerfing her Whimsy, which is her W. The movement speed buff is going from 30 to 25%, and the duration of the polymorph is being reduced at all levels. In addition, the cooldown will be higher as this is leveled up. These are some fair changes which should bring her back in line. Following this, we have Miss Fortune, who is incredibly strong at the moment. She's losing some of her attack damage growth as well as some of her health growth per level. Where these changes will help a bit, I predict her being strong for a long time yet. And the final nerf goes to Nocturne, who was pretty overbuffed last patch. He's losing some of his attack damage growth, which will slightly reduce his effectiveness, but he will still be a strong pick. As for buffs, we have a very nice one for Marksman Ash, where the Q will grant slightly more attack speed at early levels, but significantly more attack speed at later levels, which will definitely help her hyper carrying as the game goes on. Following this, we have a buff for Lee Sin. His health growth per level is being slightly increased, and the Omnivamp he gets from his W is being increased as it levels up. Both of these will simply help with his survivability. And the final buff goes to my support main Thresh. His base health growth is being increased from 115 to 120, and the damage on the Flay passive is being slightly increased at early levels and significantly increased at later levels. I think this is a brilliant change to allow him to stay aggressive against all these new hyper-aggressive supports. Next we have two adjustments, starting with Maokai. Riot seem happy with the changes, and so does the community as a whole. However, they're throwing a bit more love towards jungle Maokai. His passive heal is being slightly reduced to lower his efficiency as a laner. However, his Q will now deal a massive amount of extra damage to jungle monsters, allowing significantly faster clears. Also, the AP ratio on his saplings are being reduced. The next adjustment goes to Udyr. He's incredibly strong at the moment, so this may be seen as a slight nerf. Starting with his base stats, his health growth and armor growth are being turned down a good chunk per level. However, his Q is having a significant mana cost reduction, now only being 20 mana as standard, and it's having its AP ratio increased. In addition, the first two attacks of Q will now gain 50 attack range as well as deal maximum health damage. All these changes should heavily sway players into taking at least 1 point into Q, if not going for a Q max build. However, in exchange for the Q buffs, his W will now heal and shield a large amount less, but will give increased lifesteal as leveled up to help his Q builds. Also, on his R, its base damage and AP scaling is being heavily reduced, making a Q max feel even more viable. Other than that, there's some changes to how autofill will work, now that support is a more popular role. The Mythic shop has been rotated, and there's some fun new skins with Ashen Slayer Silas and World's Azir, as well as a whole new Fright Night set which includes skins for Annie, Draven, Nautilus, Renata, Trundle and Urgot.